Welcome to Nightshift Horror. Before we check in tonight, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know where you're tuning in from. Now get comfortable. The night shift is about to begin.
Story 1. The Midnight Roster Update. I was standing at the medication cart when the system chirped. Not the usual alert. Something deeper, like the building's network, had cleared its throat. I glanced at the monitor mounted above the nurse's station and watched the resident census refresh itself. 83 names dissolved into 84. The new entry appeared at the bottom of the list, then migrated upward, inserting itself between two familiar names. Room numbers shifted. Bed assignments recalculated. The resident's name was Evelyn Marsh. I knew that name. I had signed her death certificate 11 months ago. I had been the night shift charge nurse at Meadowbrook Care Residence for nearly 9 years. I chose nights because they were predictable. Residents slept. Families did not visit. The building settled into a rhythm governed by medication schedules, hourly checks, and the occasional fall alarm. New Year's Eve was typically quiet. Most residents were asleep by 9 p.m. The few who stayed awake watched the television in the common room until the ball dropped, then shuffled back to their rooms with assistants. By 11 p.m. the halls were silent. That year I was the only RN on duty. 2 certified nursing assistants, Amanda and Greg, covered the east and west wings. I managed charting, medication distribution, and any emergent issues. The facility had 83 residents. I knew each of them by name, diagnosis, and behavioral pattern. I knew who wandered at night, who called out for deceased spouses who required repositioning every 2 hours to prevent pressure sores. I knew the building itself, the way the fluorescent lights in the north corridor flickered at 2 a.m., the faint smell of industrial cleaner that never quite left the linoleum, the hum of the HVAC system that intensified after midnight. At 11:45 p.m. I completed my final medication pass. I returned to the nurse's station and began documenting. The computer system we used was called CareTrack. It was a centralized database that logged every resident interaction, every vital sign, every incident report. At midnight, the system automatically archived the previous year's data and generated a new annual file. I had witnessed this transition 7 times. It was seamless. A progress bar appeared on the screen, filled from left to right, then disappeared. The date in the upper right corner updated from December 31st to January 1st. This time the system hesitated. The progress bar filled to 98%, then stopped. The screen flickered. I assumed it was a minor glitch. Perhaps the server was overloaded. I waited. After 15 seconds, the progress bar completed. The date changed, but something else changed with it. The resident census updated. I had reviewed the census before midnight. 83 residents, 62 in semi-private rooms, 21 in private accommodations. 3 residents on hospice care, 2 pending discharge. The numbers were correct. I had verified them myself during the evening shift report. Now the census displayed 84 residents. I stared at the screen, certain I had miscounted. I opened the full roster. The names were listed alphabetically by last name. I scrolled slowly, comparing the current list to my memory of the previous version. Every name was familiar. Every name belonged to a living resident currently under our care. Except one. Evelyn Marsh, room 214, admitted January 1st at midnight. I felt a cold, precise pressure in my chest. Evelyn Marsh had been a resident at Meadowbrook for 6 years. She had suffered from advanced vascular dementia and congestive heart failure. She had died on February 9th of the previous year. I remembered the night clearly. I had been on duty. Her breathing had slowed throughout the evening. At 1:37 a.m., she had stopped breathing entirely. I had notified the physician, contacted the family, and completed the post-mortem documentation. Her body had been transferred to the funeral home by 4 a.m. The room had been cleaned and reassigned within a week. I checked the room assignment log. Room 214 had been occupied by a resident named Harold Finch since March. Harold was still listed in the system, but now the system also listed Evelyn Marsh in the same room. 2 residents. 1 room. I stood and walked to the medication card. I retrieved the printed medication administration record for room 214. Harold Finch's name was listed. His scheduled medications were documented. There was no entry for Evelyn Marsh. I returned to the computer and accessed Evelyn's chart. It opened without error. Her entire medical history was intact. Admission date, 6 years prior. Diagnoses, dementia, heart failure, hypertension, osteoarthritis. Medication list, current. Last vital signs recorded at 11:45 p.m. tonight. I read the entry again. Last vital signs, January 1st, 11:45 p.m. Blood pressure, 110/70. Heart rate, 72 beats per minute. Respiratory rate, 16 breaths per minute. Temperature, 98.4 degrees. Recorded by Nurse L. Whitman. That was my name. I had not recorded those vital signs. I had not assessed Evelyn Marsh. Evelyn Marsh was dead. I minimized the chart and checked the system log. Every action within CareTrack generated a timestamp and user identification. I searched for entries under my login credentials from the past hour. The log displayed my medication passes, my documentation entries, and 1 additional entry. Vital signs recorded for Marsh Evelyn. Room 214, January 1st, 11:45 p.m. I felt the pressure in my chest tighten. I had not touched Evelyn's chart. I had not been in room 214. I had been at the nurse's station completing end-of-shift documentation. I picked up the desk phone and dialed Amanda's extension. She answered after 3 rings. "East Wing," she said. "It's Laura. Can you check room 214 for me?" "Sure. What do you need?" "Just confirm who's in the room." There was a pause. I heard the faint sound of her footsteps over the line. "Harold Finch," she said. "He's asleep. Do you need me to wake him?" "No. Just Harold?" "Yeah. Why?" "The system's showing 2 residents assigned to that room." Another pause. "Who's the second one?" "Evelyn Marsh." Silence. "Laura, Evelyn died last February." "I know. Then why is she in the system?" "I don't know. I'm looking at her chart right now. It says I recorded her vitals 45 minutes ago." "That's impossible." "I know." Amanda exhaled slowly. "Do you want me to check the other rooms?" "No. Just stay on the East Wing. I'll figure this out." I ended the call and returned to the census screen. I refreshed the page. 84 residents. I opened the room assignment grid. Every room displayed correctly. Every resident was accounted for. Except Evelyn Marsh had been inserted into a room that was already occupied. I decided to walk to room 214 myself. The East Wing was dimly lit. Night lighting activated automatically after 10 p.m. Soft blue bulbs embedded in the baseboards designed to prevent falls without disrupting sleep. My footsteps were silent on the linoleum. I passed rooms 202, 204, 206. Each door was slightly ajar, as per protocol. I could hear the faint sounds of breathing, the occasional rustle of sheets. Room 214 was at the end of the hall. I stopped outside the door and listened. I heard Harold's breathing, slow, steady, unobstructed. I heard nothing else. I pushed the door open gently. The room was arranged in standard configuration. 1 hospital bed positioned against the left wall. 1 bedside table. 1 recliner for visitors. 1 television mounted on the opposite wall. Harold was asleep on his back, his mouth slightly open. The oxygen concentrator hummed softly beside the bed. There was no second bed, no second resident, no indication that anyone else occupied the space. I stepped inside and checked the closet. Harold's clothing hung neatly on plastic hangers. His shoes were lined up on the floor. Nothing else. I returned to the hallway and closed the door quietly. I walked back to the nurse's station and sat down. I accessed the system again and searched for Evelyn Marsh's discharge summary. Every deceased resident had a discharge summary documenting the date, time, and cause of death. I located Evelyn's file and opened it. Discharge date, February 9th. Discharge time, 1:37 a.m. Discharge reason, deceased. Below the summary, there was a note I had written myself. Resident expired peacefully, family notified, body released to Harrington Funeral Services, room cleared and sanitized per protocol. I scrolled down. Below my note, there was a new entry. Readmission, January 1st, midnight, reason, annual review, assigned room 214. The entry was time-stamped at midnight. The user identification was listed as System Auto Update. I stared at the screen for a long time. I checked the other deceased residents from the past year. There were 11 total. I opened each file individually. None of them had been readmitted. None of them appeared on the current census. Only Evelyn. I closed the files and checked the time. It was 12:32 a.m. I decided to call the IT support line. CareTrack was maintained by a third-party vendor. They provided 24-hour technical support for system errors. I dialed the number and waited. After 4 rings, an automated voice answered. "Thank you for calling CareTrack support. All representatives are currently assisting other clients. Your estimated wait time is 45 minutes. Please remain on the line." I placed the phone on speaker and returned to the computer. I opened Evelyn's medication administration record. It was fully populated. Every medication she had been prescribed prior to her death was listed as active. Scheduled doses were projected through the end of January. I checked the nursing notes. The most recent entry was from tonight. Resident resting comfortably, no complaints. Vitals stable, continue current care plan. The note was signed with my credentials. I read it again slowly. I had not written that note. I had not assessed Evelyn. I had not entered her room. I picked up the phone. The hold music continued. I waited. At 1:14 a.m., a representative answered. CareTrack support, this is Dennis. How can I assist you? I'm calling from Meadowbrook Care Residence. We are experiencing a system error. A deceased resident is showing as active on our census. Okay. Can you provide the resident's name and your facility identification number? I gave him both. I heard typing. All right, I'm pulling up your facility data now. Can you confirm the resident's date of death? February 9th of last year. More typing. I see the discharge summary here. The resident is listed as deceased, but you're saying they're appearing on the active census? Yes, as of midnight tonight. And this resident is not physically present in the facility? Correct. Okay. This sounds like a carryover error from the annual archive process. Sometimes the system duplicates entries during the transition. I can flag this for manual review. It should be corrected within 72 hours. 72 hours? Yes. Our development team will need to verify the data integrity before making changes. In the meantime, you can ignore the duplicate entry. It won't affect your medication records or billing. The system is showing that I recorded vital signs for this resident tonight. A pause. You're saying the system logged an assessment under your credentials? Yes. Did you access the resident's chart at any point this evening? I opened it to check why it was active, but I didn't document anything. Opening the chart can sometimes trigger an autosave function. It's possible the system interpreted your access as an assessment entry. I didn't enter any data. I understand. I'll include that in the report. Again, this should be resolved within 72 hours. Is there anything else I can assist with? No. Thank you for calling CareTrack support. Have a good night. The line disconnected. I sat in silence. At 1:45 a.m., I received a notification on the computer. A new physician's order had been entered for Evelyn Marsh. I opened the order. It was a request for a chest X-ray, scheduled for 8 a.m. The ordering physician was Dr. Raymond Collier. He had retired 3 years ago. I checked the physician directory. Dr. Collier's profile was listed as inactive. His last documented order had been in October 3 years prior. I closed the notification and returned to the census screen. 84 residents. I refreshed the page. 85 residents. I opened the roster. A new name had appeared, Margaret Howell, room 312, admitted January 1st, 1:45 a.m. I remembered Margaret. She had died in July. I stood and walked to the west wing. Room 312 was occupied by a woman named Dorothy Lang. I checked through the door. Dorothy was asleep, alone. I returned to the nurse's station. The system chirped again. 86 residents. I watched the screen as another name populated the list, then another. By 2:30 a.m., the census displayed 91 residents. 8 of them were deceased. All of them had been readmitted at intervals throughout the past 2 hours. All of them had been assigned to rooms that were already occupied. I tried calling IT support again. The wait time was now estimated at 2 hours. I hung up. At 3 a.m., Amanda called me from the East Wing. "Laura, I'm hearing voices in the empty rooms." "What kind of voices?" "Conversations. Like residents talking to each other, but the rooms are empty." "Which rooms?" 214, 218, 222. All 3 rooms were listed as occupied by deceased residents in the system. "Stay at the nurse's station," I said. "Don't go into those rooms." "Okay." I ended the call. I looked at the census screen. 94 residents. I thought about the progress bar at midnight, the way it had hesitated at 98%. I thought about the annual archive process, the way the system stored data from previous years. I thought about Evelyn Marsh, who had been dead for 11 months, whose vitals I had somehow recorded, whose chest X-ray was scheduled for morning. I opened the system settings and navigated to the archive directory. I found the folder labeled Deceased Residents. I opened it. The folder was empty. The system had not archived the deceased residents, it had reactivated them. I closed the folder and returned to the census screen. 102 residents. The number continued to climb. At 4:37 a.m., the fire alarm activated. Not a drill, a full building evacuation alarm. I checked the fire panel. It indicated smoke detection in the East Wing, room 214. I ran to the room. The door was closed. I pushed it open. Harold was still asleep. There was no smoke, no fire. The alarm continued to wail. I checked the smoke detector on the ceiling. The indicator light was dark. The alarm stopped. I returned to the nurse's station. The census screen had frozen. The number displayed was 139 residents. I tried to refresh the page. The system did not respond. I tried to log out. The system did not respond. The screen remained static. 139 residents. All of them listed with my name as the assigned nurse. All of them scheduled for assessments, medications, care plans. All of them waiting. I looked at the time. 5:12 a.m. In 3 hours, the day shift would arrive. They would see the census. They would ask questions. I did not know how to explain that the building had quietly filled itself with residents who no longer existed. I did not know how to explain that the system had assigned me to care for them. I sat at the desk and waited for morning. The screen did not change. But somewhere in the building I could hear footsteps, slow, uneven footsteps, moving through the halls. I did not get up to check. I knew what I would find. Some records update themselves at midnight. Some residents return when the year resets, and some of us are assigned to care for them whether we signed the paperwork or not. Story 2. January Intake Evaluation. The woman across from me completed the cognitive assessment in 4 minutes. That alone was unusual. Most new admissions required 20 to 30 minutes, often with prompting. She marked each answer with steady, deliberate strokes, never pausing, never asking for clarification. When she finished, she placed the pen down, aligned it parallel to the edge of the clipboard, and folded her hands in her lap. I collected the form and glanced at the header. Name, Iris Brennan. Date of birth, April 12th, 1932. Admission date, January 2nd. I scanned the first question. What is today's date? Her answer read, January 2nd, 2031. I looked up at her. She was watching me with a calm, unblinking expression. I checked the calendar on my desk. It displayed January 2nd, 2025. I returned my attention to the form and continued reading. I had worked as the geriatric admissions coordinator at Riverview Transitional Care Facility for 13 years. My role involved evaluating prospective residents to determine appropriate levels of care, coordinating with families and medical providers, and ensuring that intake documentation met state regulatory requirements. The first week of January was consistently the busiest period. Families often delayed admission decisions until after the holidays. Insurance plans reset on January 1st, triggering deductibles and coverage changes. Medical necessity evaluations were rushed through to align with new fiscal years. Riverview was a tiered care facility. We offered independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. Residents could transition between levels as their needs changed. My office was located on the first floor adjacent to the main lobby. It was a small windowless room furnished with a desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, and a desktop computer connected to our electronic health record system. I conducted all initial intake evaluations in this room. The process was standardized. I reviewed the applicant's medical history, completed a baseline cognitive assessment, discussed care preferences, and generated a preliminary placement recommendation. The cognitive assessment I used was called the Orientation and Memory Screening Tool. It consisted of 12 questions designed to evaluate orientation to time, place, and person, as well as short-term recall and basic problem solving. The questions were simple. What is today's date? Where are you right now? What year were you born? Who is the current president? The assessment took most applicants between 15 and 30 minutes. Those with advanced dementia required more time and often could not complete it independently. Those with intact cognition completed it quickly, but rarely in less than 10 minutes. Speed was not the goal. Accuracy was. Iris Brennan had completed the assessment in 4 minutes. Her handwriting was precise, each letter evenly spaced and uniformly sized. I reviewed her answers sequentially. Question 1. What is today's date? Answer, January 2nd, 2031. Question 2. Where are you right now? Answer, Riverview Transitional Care Facility, Intake Office, 1st floor. Question 3. What year were you born? Answer, 1932. Question 4. Who is the current president? Answer, I do not recognize that title in this context. Question 5. What is your current age? Answer, 99 years. I paused. If she had been born in 1932 and the current year was 2025, she would be 92 or 93, depending on whether her birthday had passed. 99 would place her birth year in 1926. I checked the demographic information at the top of the form. Date of birth, April 12th, 1932. I returned to her age calculation. 99 years. The math did not align. I continued reading. Question 6. Can you recall the 3 words I asked you to remember? Answer: catalog, perimeter, operator. I had not asked her to remember 3 words. That instruction was part of the standard protocol, but I had not yet reached that section of the assessment. The protocol required me to provide 3 unrelated words at the beginning of the session, then ask the applicant to recall them at the end. I had not begun the session yet. I had simply handed her the form and asked her to complete it. I scanned the remaining questions. Question 7. Please write the names of any family members or friends who visit you regularly. Answer: there are no active external contacts in my current iteration. Question 8. Describe your daily routine. Answer: I attend scheduled assessments. I comply with documentation requests. I await placement recommendations. Question 9. What hobbies or activities do you enjoy? Answer: I observe procedural accuracy. I track systemic continuity. Question 10. Do you feel safe in your current living situation? Answer: safety is not a variable I am instructed to measure. Question 11. Have you experienced any falls, confusion, or memory problems recently? Answer: I experience recursive disorientation during intake periods. Question 12. Is there anything else you would like us to know about your health or care needs? Answer: I have been admitted to this facility 6 times. Each intake evaluation follows an identical sequence. You will recommend memory care placement. I will be assigned to Unit C, Room 14. The cycle will reset in 48 hours. I placed the clipboard on the desk and looked at Iris. She had not moved. Her hands remained folded in her lap. Her expression was neutral, attentive. Mrs. Brennan, I said, can you clarify your answer to question 12? Yes, she said. Her voice was soft, steady. I have completed this intake process 6 times. This is the 7th iteration. You've been admitted here before? Yes, 6 previous admissions. I turned to my computer and accessed the resident database. I entered her name and date of birth. The search returned no results. I tried searching by last name only. No results. I checked the archived records, which included former residents who had been discharged or deceased. No results. Mrs. Brennan, I'm not finding any record of prior admissions. Are you certain you've been here before? Yes, I have been admitted on January 2nd for the past 6 years. Each admission follows the same procedural sequence. You conduct the intake evaluation. You administer the cognitive assessment. You identify discrepancies in my responses. You contact your supervisor for guidance. I felt a faint cold pressure at the base of my skull. I haven't contacted my supervisor. You will, she said. At approximately 11:27 a.m. She will instruct you to proceed with the placement recommendation. I will be assigned to Memory Care Unit C, Room 14. I will remain there for 47 hours. On January 4th at 11 a.m., the system will initiate a discharge process. By midnight, I will no longer appear in the database. On January 2nd of the following year, I will be readmitted. I stared at her. She did not blink. How do you know this? I asked. I have observed it 6 times. I retain memory of each iteration. The procedural sequence does not change. I picked up the intake form again and reread her answers. You wrote that today's date is January 2nd, 2031. Yes. Today's date is January 2nd, 2025. From your current perspective, yes. What does that mean? I am experiencing this date in 2031. You are experiencing it in 2025. The facility exists in multiple temporal iterations simultaneously. I occupy one of them. I stood and walked to the filing cabinet. I retrieved the physical intake folder for the current year. It contained blank forms, consent documents, and procedural checklists. I flipped through the pages, searching for any prior documentation related to Iris Brennan. There was none. I returned to the desk. Mrs. Brennan, who referred you to this facility? There is no external referral. My admission is generated internally by the facility's scheduling system. That's not possible. All admissions require a referral from a hospital, physician, or family member. I understand the protocol. I am explaining what occurs. I sat down and accessed the admissions queue on my computer. The queue displayed all pending intake evaluations. Iris Brennan's name was listed at the top. Referral source, internal transfer. Transferring unit, none listed. Admission reason, annual review. I clicked on the referral details. The field was blank. I minimized the window and opened the email system. I searched for any correspondence related to Iris Brennan. The search returned one result, an email sent to me at 9:15 a.m. this morning. The sender was listed as System Administrator. The subject line read, Intake Evaluation Required. Brennan, Iris. I opened the email. Please complete standard intake evaluation for the above resident. Assignment to memory care anticipated. Proceed per protocol. There was no signature, no contact information, no additional context. I checked the sender's email address. It was formatted as admin@riverviewcare.local. I tried to reply. The system returned an error message. Recipient address not found. I closed the email and looked at Iris. You said I would contact my supervisor at 11:27 a.m. Yes. I checked the time on my computer. It was 11:21 a.m. I picked up my desk phone and dialed my supervisor's extension. The line rang 4 times, then transferred to voicemail. I hung up and tried her cell phone. She answered after 2 rings. Susan Harding. Susan, it's Emily. I need guidance on an intake evaluation. What's the issue? I'm with a new admission. There are inconsistencies in the referral documentation and the assessment responses. I can't verify the referral source, and the resident is providing answers that don't align with reality. What kind of answers? She's writing dates that are 6 years in the future. She's claiming she's been admitted here multiple times, but I can't find any record of it. She's describing procedural details she shouldn't have access to. There was a pause. What's the resident's name? Iris Brennan. I heard typing over the line. I don't see that name in the active census or the pending admissions queue. She's in my queue. I'm looking at the referral right now. More typing. Emily, I'm not seeing her on my end. Can you send me a screenshot of the referral? I minimized the call screen and took a screenshot of the admissions queue. I attached it to an email and sent it to Susan. I waited. I received the screenshot, Susan said, but the name isn't appearing in the queue when I access it from my system. That doesn't make sense. I agree. Look, just proceed with the placement recommendation. If the system generated the referral, there's a valid admission order somewhere. We'll sort out the documentation afterward, assign her to memory care, and flag the file for administrative review. She's claiming I'll assign her to Unit C, Room 14. Is that room available? I checked the bed availability report. Unit C, Room 14 was listed as vacant. Yes. Then place her there. I'll follow up with IT about the referral issue. Okay. Anything else? No. Let me know if you need anything. The call ended. I checked the time. 11:27 a.m. I looked at Iris. She had not moved. You were correct, I said. Yes. How did you know I would call my supervisor at that exact time? You called her at 11:27 a.m. during each of the previous 6 iterations. And she told me to proceed with placement? Yes. To Unit C, Room 14? Yes. I turned back to the computer and accessed the placement module. I entered Iris's name and selected memory care as the recommended level of care. The system prompted me to select an available room. I scrolled through the list. Unit C, Room 14 appeared as an option. I selected it. The system processed the placement and generated a confirmation screen. Resident Brennan, Iris assigned to Memory Care Unit C, Room 14. Admission date January 2nd. Anticipated discharge January 4th. I read the anticipated discharge date twice. Why is there a discharge date already populated? I asked. The system projects my discharge based on prior iterations, Iris said. Residents aren't discharged from memory care after 48 hours. That's not standard practice. I am not a standard resident. I printed the placement confirmation and added it to her intake folder. I stood and walked to the door. I'll take you to Unit C now. Iris rose from her chair and followed me into the hallway. We walked to the elevator. I pressed the button for the 3rd floor. The elevator ascended smoothly. We exited into the memory care wing. The hallway was quiet, soft lighting, neutral paint, handrails mounted along both walls. I led Iris to room 14 and opened the door. The room was furnished with a single bed, a dresser, a bedside table, and a recliner. The window overlooked the facility's courtyard. I gestured toward the room. This will be your space. A nurse will check on you shortly to complete your health assessment. Iris stepped inside and walked to the window. She stood there for a moment, looking out at the courtyard. I have stood in this room 6 times, she said. I have looked through this window 6 times. The courtyard is always empty. The trees are always bare, the sky is always gray. I glanced through the window. The courtyard was empty, the trees were bare, the sky was overcast. It's January, I said, and the weather is typical for this time of year. Iris turned to face me. When you return to your office, you will review my intake form again. You will notice details you did not observe during the initial review. You will attempt to contact the system administrator. You will receive no response. On January 4th at 11 a.m., you will be notified of my discharge. You will access my file to complete the discharge summary. The file will be empty. You will search for me in the building. You will not find me. By midnight, you will forget this conversation. On January 2nd of next year, you will repeat this process. I felt the cold pressure return to the base of my skull. Why are you telling me this? Because I do not know if you can alter the sequence. I do not know if this iteration will differ from the others. I am providing you with information in the hope that you will recognize the pattern. What pattern? This facility processes residents through iterative cycles. Some of us are assigned to repeat. You are part of the procedural mechanism. You may not be aware of it yet. I stepped back from the doorway. I'm going to contact my supervisor again. You will not reach her. She will be in a meeting from 11:45 a.m. until 1:30 p.m. When she returns your call, she will tell you to complete the discharge summary on January 4th and close the file. I left the room and walked quickly to the elevator. I descended to the 1st floor and returned to my office. I sat at my desk and picked up the intake form. I read it again, slowly. This time I noticed something I had missed. At the bottom of the form, in the section reserved for the evaluator's signature, there was a signature. It was not mine. The handwriting was similar, but the letters were slightly different. The date beside the signature read January 2nd, 2031. I opened the desk drawer and retrieved a pen. I signed the form with my own signature and compared the two. They were nearly identical. but the date was wrong. I picked up the phone and dialed the system administrator's extension. The line rang continuously. No voicemail, no answer. I hung up and opened my email. I composed a message to the administrator explaining the discrepancies in Iris Brennan's intake documentation. I clicked send. The system returned an error message. Message could not be delivered. Recipient does not exist. I closed the email and accessed the resident database. I searched for Iris Brennan. The search returned one result. Resident name, Brennan Iris. Admission date, January 2nd. Assigned unit, Memory Care Unit C, Room 14. Anticipated discharge, January 4th. I clicked on the resident profile. The file contained no medical history, no prior admissions, no family contacts, no physician notes, only the intake form I had completed, and the signature that was not quite mine. I printed the resident profile and placed it in the intake folder. I checked the time, 12:14 p.m. I stood and walked to the third floor. I returned to Unit C, Room 14. The door was open. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made. The dresser was bare. The recliner was positioned precisely in the corner. I walked to the window. The courtyard was empty. The trees were bare. The sky was gray. I returned to the hallway and approached the nurse's station. "Excuse me," I said to the nurse on duty. "Did you complete a health assessment for the new admission in room 14? The nurse looked up from her computer. "We don't have a new admission today." "Yes, you do. Iris Brennan. I admitted her an hour ago." The nurse checked her screen. "I'm not showing any new admissions for Unit C. Check room 14. The nurse clicked through several screens. Room 14 is listed as vacant. I felt the pressure spread from the base of my skull to my temples. I assigned a resident to that room at 11:30 a.m. "I'm sorry, Emily, there's no record of it." I returned to my office and accessed the admissions queue. Iris Brennan's name was no longer listed. I searched the resident database. No results. I opened the intake folder. The form was still there. The signature was still there. The date was still there. January 2nd, 2031. I placed the folder in the filing cabinet and locked it. I sat at my desk and waited. At 1:45 p.m., Susan called me. "Emily, I reviewed the screenshot you sent. I think there was a system glitch. I'm not seeing any record of that admission now. Did you complete the placement?" "Yes, Unit C, Room 14. The room is showing as vacant." "I know. Did the resident show up?" "Yes, I brought her to the room myself." "Where is she now?" "I don't know." There was a pause. "Emily, are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine. Maybe take a break. It's been a busy week." "Okay." She hung up. I opened the filing cabinet and retrieved the intake folder. The form was gone. The folder was empty. I closed the cabinet and locked it. I checked the time, 2:12 p.m. I returned to the admissions queue. A new name appeared. Iris Brennan. Referral source. Internal transfer. Admission date, January 2nd, 2031. I stared at the screen. The date changed. January 2nd, 2026, then 2027, then 2028. The name remained constant. I minimized the window. I did not complete the intake. I did not respond to the referral. I sat at my desk and waited for the shift to end. When I left the building at 5 p.m., I looked back at the third floor. The window of Unit C, Room 14, was dark, but I could see a figure standing there looking out at the courtyard. I did not return the next day. On January 4th, I received an automated email instructing me to complete a discharge summary for Iris Brennan. I did not open it. Some residents are admitted before they arrive. Some forms are signed before we write our names, and some of us have been repeating the same procedural sequence for longer than we remember. Story 3. The End-of-Year Medication Hold. The hold began at 11:59 p.m. on December 31st. I was standing in the pharmacy when the dispensing system locked. The screen flashed a notification. Annual medication reconciliation in progress. All scheduled doses suspended until 0100 hours. The suspension was protocol. Every year, the facility paused medication administration for 61 minutes to allow the automated reconciliation process to verify prescription records, update insurance authorizations, and synchronize formulary changes. Residents received their final doses of the year at 11 p.m. The next doses were scheduled for 1 a.m. In between, the pharmacy was silent. I had overseen this process for 8 years without incident. But this year, one resident began deteriorating the moment the clock changed. Room 417. A man named Owen Talley. His vitals dropped at midnight. By 12:15 a.m., he was unresponsive. By 12:30 a.m., his heart had stopped. At 1 a.m., when the hold lifted and his medications resumed, he woke up. I had been the lead pharmacist at Greenfield Extended Care for 11 years. I managed medication dispensing, drug utilization reviews, and regulatory compliance for 206 residents. The pharmacy was located in the basement, a secure, climate-controlled space accessible only to licensed staff. It was a narrow room lined with metal shelving units that held thousands of individually packaged doses. Each dose was labeled with the resident's name, room number, medication name, strength, and scheduled administration time. The dispensing system was automated. Nurses scanned resident wristbands at point of care, and the system released the corresponding medications from locked drawers. I monitored the system remotely from a workstation in the pharmacy. My primary responsibility was ensuring that the right medication reached the right resident at the right time. December 31st was always a demanding day. Many residents required medications that were scheduled multiple times daily. Cardiac medications, insulin, anticoagulants, analgesics. The final medication pass of the year occurred at 11 p.m. After that, the system initiated the annual reconciliation hold. The hold was a state-mandated procedure designed to prevent prescription errors during the transition to a new fiscal year. Insurance formularies changed. Prior authorizations expired. Generic substitutions were updated. The reconciliation process verified every active prescription against the updated database and flagged discrepancies for manual review. The process took exactly 61 minutes. Medication administration resumed at 1 a.m. on January 1st. I had prepared for the hold by completing early reviews of high-risk medications, anticoagulants, insulin, opioids. I verified that all scheduled doses for 11 p.m. had been administered. I confirmed that the system backup had completed successfully. At 11:45 p.m., I began the manual lockout sequence. I disabled the dispensing system's override function, ensuring that no medications could be accessed during the hold. At 11:59 p.m., the system displayed the suspension notification. I logged the event in the pharmacy records and waited. The reconciliation process ran silently. I could see the progress indicator on my screen, a horizontal bar that filled incrementally as the system processed each resident's medication profile. At 12:05 a.m., the progress bar reached 18%. The process was on schedule. I reviewed the preliminary reconciliation report. No major discrepancies. A few formulary changes. One prior authorization renewal pending. Everything appeared routine. At 12:11 a.m., I received a call from the 4th floor nursing station. Pharmacy, this is Denise. I need to access medications for room 417. The resident's condition is declining. I can't release medications until 1 a.m. The system is locked for reconciliation. I understand, but the resident's blood pressure is dropping. He needs his cardiac meds. What's his name? Owen Talley. I pulled up Owen's medication profile on my screen. He was prescribed carvedilol, lisinopril, and furosemide, standard medications for congestive heart failure. His last doses had been administered at 11 p.m. The next doses were scheduled for 7 a.m. His cardiac medications aren't due until morning, I said. I know, but he's deteriorating. His pressure is 80/50, his heart rate is 42, he's lethargic. I checked Owen's vital signs log. At 11:30 p.m., his blood pressure had been 120/75. His heart rate had been 68. 30 minutes ago, his vitals had been stable. When did the decline start? I asked. Around midnight. It's been gradual, but it's accelerating. Has the physician been notified? I called Dr. Mercer. She's reviewing the chart now. She asked me to check if we can administer an early dose. I can't access the dispensing system until the hold is lifted. That's protocol. Can you override it? No. The override function is disabled during reconciliation. There was a pause. Okay. I'll let Dr. Mercer know. The call ended. I reviewed Owen's chart more carefully. He was 79 years old. He had been a resident at Greenfield for 3 years. His primary diagnoses were congestive heart failure, chronic kidney disease, and type 2 diabetes. His medication regimen was stable. He had experienced no recent hospitalizations, no falls, no infections. His last physician visit had been 2 weeks ago. No changes to his treatment plan. I checked his vital signs log again. The decline was documented precisely. Midnight. Blood pressure 100/60. Heart rate 58. 12:05 a.m. Blood pressure 90/55. Heart rate 50. 12:10 a.m. Blood pressure 80/50. Heart rate 42. The pattern was consistent. His vitals were dropping approximately 10 points every 5 minutes. I checked the time. 12:16 a.m. If the pattern continued, his blood pressure would reach critical levels before 1 a.m. I accessed the override authorization request form. It required approval from both the attending physician and the facility's medical director. I called Dr. Mercer's extension. She answered immediately. This is Dr. Mercer. Doctor, it's Paul from pharmacy. I received a call about Owen Talley in room 417. The nurse mentioned you're reviewing his chart. Yes, his vitals are declining. I'd like to administer an early dose of his cardiac medications. I can't release medications until 1 a.m. The system is locked. Can you request an override? I can submit a request, but it requires authorization from the medical director. Dr. Hahn is off-site tonight. I'd need to contact him by phone. How long will that take? At least 20 minutes, possibly longer if he doesn't answer immediately. There was silence on the line. Doctor, is there an acute medical event occurring? A cardiac event? A stroke? I don't know. His presentation is unusual. He's lethargic but responsive. No chest pain, no respiratory distress, no neurological deficits. His vitals are simply dropping. Has this happened before? Not according to his records. Is there anything in his recent history that might explain this? No. He's been stable for months. I checked the time. 12:18 a.m. I'll contact Dr. Hahn and request authorization for an override. In the meantime, continue monitoring his vitals. Understood? I ended the call and dialed Dr. Hahn's cell phone. The line rang 6 times, then transferred to voicemail. I left a message explaining the situation and requesting an urgent call back. I hung up and returned to Owen's chart. I reviewed his medication list again. Carvedilol, lisinopril, furosemide. All standard treatments for heart failure. None of them were scheduled for administration between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. There was no PRN order for early dosing. I checked the medication reconciliation log. Owen's prescriptions had been processed by the system at 12:03 a.m. No changes, no discrepancies. His medications were confirmed as active. I checked his vital signs log. 12:20 a.m. Blood pressure 70/45. Heart rate 38. The decline was continuing. I called the 4th floor nursing station again. Denise, it's Paul. I left a message for Dr. Hahn. I'm waiting for a call back. Okay. Owen's pressure is down to 70/45. Is he still responsive? Barely. He's not speaking. His eyes are open, but he's not tracking movement. Has his condition changed in any other way? No. Just the vitals. Let me know immediately if there's any acute change. I will. I ended the call. I reviewed the reconciliation progress. The system had reached 42%. Estimated completion time, 12:47 a.m. I checked the time. 12:23 a.m. I accessed the emergency medication override procedure. It allowed manual access to the dispensing system in the event of a life-threatening emergency. The procedure required physical entry into the pharmacy, manual unlocking of the medication storage cabinets, and documentation of the override event. The override could only be executed by a licensed pharmacist. I was the only pharmacist on duty. I stood and walked to the medication storage area. The cabinets were locked with electronic keypads. I entered my access code. The system rejected it. Override function disabled. Medication reconciliation in progress. I tried again. The same message appeared. I returned to my workstation and called the IT support line for the dispensing system. An automated voice answered. Thank you for calling Med Dispense Support. All representatives are currently assisting other clients. Your estimated wait time is 35 minutes. I hung up. I checked Owen's vitals again. 12:28 a.m. Blood pressure 60/40, heart rate 32. I called Denise. His vitals are critical. We need to initiate emergency protocols. What do you want me to do? Prepare for possible code response. Have the crash cart available. Notify the charge nurse. Okay. I ended the call. I reviewed the reconciliation progress. 51% complete. Estimated completion time, 12:43 a.m. I checked the time, 12:31 a.m. I tried calling Dr. Hahn again. No answer. I accessed the State Pharmacy Board's emergency contact directory. I located the after-hours emergency authorization line. I dialed the number. A representative answered after 4 rings. State Pharmacy Board emergency authorization line. I explained the situation. The representative asked for Owen's information, my credentials, and the facility's license number. I provided all of it. Mr. Keller, I understand the urgency. However, the annual medication reconciliation hold is a mandated procedure. Overriding it requires documented medical necessity and approval from the facility's medical director. I've been unable to reach the medical director. Then I cannot authorize an override. You'll need to continue attempting to contact him. The resident's vitals are critical. His blood pressure is 60/40. Has the attending physician initiated emergency medical protocols? Yes. Then the physician should proceed with those protocols. If the resident requires hospitalization, EMS should be contacted. The decline is occurring exclusively during the medication hold. His vitals were stable before midnight. There was a pause. Are you suggesting the decline is related to the suspension of his medications? I don't know, but the timing is exact. His vitals began dropping at midnight, the moment the hold began. What medications is he prescribed? Carvedilol, lisinopril, furosemide. None of those medications have a half-life short enough to cause acute decompensation within 30 minutes of a missed dose. I understand, but the timing is exact. Mr. Keller, I cannot authorize an override based on temporal correlation. If the resident's condition continues to decline, the physician should initiate transfer to an acute care facility. The call ended. I checked Owen's vitals. 12:35 a.m. Blood pressure 50/35. Heart rate 28. I called Denise. "We're losing him," she said. "He's unresponsive, no pulse detected." "Initiate code response." "Already in progress." I heard voices in the background, the rapid clipped exchanges of a code team. I remained on the line. At 12:38 a.m., Denise returned. "He's in a systole. No electrical activity. We're continuing compressions." "Understood." I checked the reconciliation progress. 63% complete. I checked the time. 12:40 a.m. I listened to the code response over the phone. Compressions, ventilation, medication administration via the crash cart, epinephrine, atropine, the rhythm checks, the continuing absence of pulse. At 12:52 a.m. I heard Dr. Mercer's voice. Time of death, 12:52 a.m. I felt a cold, hollow pressure in my chest. The reconciliation progress reached 94%. I checked the time, 12:56 a.m. At 1 a.m., the system completed the reconciliation process. The suspension notification disappeared. The dispensing system unlocked. Scheduled medications resumed. I accessed Owen's profile. His 1 a.m. dose of carvedilol was queued for administration. I stared at the screen. The dose was scheduled. The system expected him to receive it. I called the fourth-floor nursing station. Denise answered. "Pharmacy, this is Denise." "This is Paul. The system is showing a scheduled dose for Owen Talley at 1 a.m. There was a long silence. "Paul Owen is deceased. We pronounced him 8 minutes ago." "I know. But the system didn't register his death. The reconciliation process locked the database. I can't update his status until the process completes." "It's 1 a.m. The process is complete." "Yes, but the system queued his medications before I could mark him as deceased. So what happens now?" "I need to cancel the dose manually." I accessed the dose cancellation interface. I entered Owen's name and room number. I selected the 1 a.m. dose of carvedilol. I clicked cancel. The system rejected the request. Cancellation denied. Resident status active. Dose administration required. I tried again. The same message appeared. I accessed Owen's resident profile and attempted to update his status to deceased. The system rejected the update. Status change denied. Annual reconciliation in progress. Database locked for updates. I checked the reconciliation progress. It displayed 100% complete, but the database was still locked. I called IT support again. The wait time was now 42 minutes. I hung up. I checked the time, 1:03 a.m. I heard footsteps on the stairs. I turned and saw Denise entering the pharmacy. "Paul, something's wrong." "What?" "Owen's monitor is showing activity." "What kind of activity?" "Cardiac rhythm, pulse, respiration." I stared at her. "That's impossible." "You pronounced him." "I know, but the monitor is live. I'm looking at it right now." She held up her phone. On the screen, I could see a cardiac monitor displaying a normal sinus rhythm. Heart rate 65, blood pressure 110/70. I stood and followed her upstairs. We entered room 417. Owen was lying in bed. His eyes were open. He was breathing. Dr. Mercer was standing beside the bed, staring at him. "He has a pulse," she said quietly. I approached the bed. I checked his wrist. I felt a strong, steady pulse. "This isn't possible," I said. Dr. Mercer did not respond. I checked the crash cart. The medications that had been administered during the code were documented. Epinephrine, atropine. The timestamps were accurate. I checked the cardiac monitor. It displayed normal vital signs. I looked at Owen. He was staring at the ceiling, unblinking. "Mr. Tally," Dr. Mercer said, "can you hear me?" Owen did not respond. She checked his pupils. They were equal and reactive. She checked his reflexes. They were intact. She performed a sternal rub. No response. "He's neurologically intact," she said, "but he's not responding to stimuli." I checked the time. 1:11 a.m. I returned to the pharmacy and accessed the dispensing system. Owen's 1 a.m. dose of carvedilol was still queued. I selected the dose and clicked Administer. The system released the medication from the locked drawer. I retrieved it and returned to room 417. Dr. Mercer was still at the bedside. I handed her the medication. "What are you doing?" she asked. "His dose is scheduled. The system is requiring administration." "Paul, he was dead." "I know. But he isn't now." She stared at me. I gestured to the medication. She hesitated, then administered it. Owen swallowed. At 1:15 a.m., he blinked. At 1:17 a.m., he turned his head toward Dr. Mercer. "Where am I?" he asked. Dr. Mercer exhaled slowly. "You're at Greenfield. You're safe." "What happened?" "You had a medical event. You're stable now." Owen closed his eyes. I returned to the pharmacy and accessed his chart. The system had updated his status. The 1 a.m. dose was marked as administered. The next dose was scheduled for 7 a.m. I checked his vital signs log. 1:15 a.m. Blood pressure 110/70. Heart rate 65. I checked the reconciliation log. The process had completed at 1 a.m. All medications had resumed. I checked the time of death entry. It was gone. There was no record of the code response, no documentation of a systole, no pronouncement. I accessed the nursing notes. Denise had documented the entire event, the declining vitals, the code response, the time of death. I refreshed the screen. The notes were gone. I called Denise. "Did you document the code response?" "Yes, I entered it at 12:55 a.m. "It's not in the system." "What?" "The entire event is gone. There's no record of it." Silence. "Paul, I watched him die." "I know." "What happened?" "I don't know." I ended the call. I reviewed Owen's chart for the next 3 hours. His vitals remained stable. He slept. At 7 a.m., he received his scheduled medications. He woke. He ate breakfast. He spoke coherently. He remembered nothing. At 8 a.m., I left the facility. I did not document the event. I did not report it to administration. I did not discuss it with Dr. Mercer or Denise again. 1 year later, on December 31st, I monitored the medication reconciliation hold from the pharmacy. At midnight, Owen Tally's vitals began to drop. At 12:52 a.m., his heart stopped. At 1 a.m., when his medications resumed, he woke up. I administered his dose. He lived. Some medications are not prescribed by physicians. Some doses are required by the system itself. And some residents are kept alive not by pharmacology, but by the precise rhythm of annual reconciliation. Story 4. Quiet Hours, January 1st. I entered the West Wing at 12:14 a.m. and immediately noticed the silence. Not the usual silence, the kind punctuated by ventilators, the occasional cough, the hum of nurse call systems waiting to be activated. This was a different quality of silence, denser, deliberate. I had worked as a certified nursing assistant at Meadowcrest Residential Care for 6 years. I knew the sounds of Nightshift. I knew which residents snored, which called out in their sleep, which required repositioning every 2 hours. I knew the rhythm of the building, but at 12:14 a.m. on January 1st, that rhythm had stopped. Every resident in the West Wing was awake. None of them had pressed their call button. None of them were speaking. They were all sitting upright in their beds, listening. My shift began at 11 p.m. on December 31st. I reported to the West Wing, which housed 42 residents, most of them requiring assistance with activities of daily living. My responsibilities included answering call lights, assisting with toileting, performing bed checks, and documenting any changes in resident status. The West Wing was configured as a long corridor with 21 rooms on each side. Each room housed 2 residents. The nurses' station was located at the center of the corridor. I shared the shift with another CNA named Marcus, who covered the East Wing. New Year's Eve was typically uneventful. Most residents went to bed early. A few stayed awake to watch the televised countdown, then requested assistance returning to their rooms shortly after midnight. The charge nurse, a woman named Helen, managed both wings from the central station. She handled medication administration and physician communication. Marcus and I handled direct care. At 11:30 p.m., I completed my first round of bed checks. All residents were asleep or resting quietly. I documented the round and returned to the nurses' station. Helen was reviewing medication records. Marcus was restocking supplies. We spoke briefly about the upcoming shift. Helen mentioned that the facility administrator had sent an email requesting that staff minimize noise after midnight to allow residents to sleep undisturbed. It was a standard request, but the timing was unusual. Administrators typically did not send emails at 11 p.m. on New Year's Eve. At 11:50 p.m., I began my second round. I walked the West Wing corridor slowly, checking each room. Residents were still asleep. I adjusted blankets, repositioned a few residents to prevent pressure sores, and emptied a urinal in room 12. Everything was routine. At midnight, I was standing outside room 18 when I heard the televisions turn off. Not one television. All of them, simultaneously. I walked back toward the nurses' station. The corridor was dark except for the night lighting embedded in the baseboards. I passed room 16. The television was off. I passed room 14. The television was off. I checked every room. Every television in the West Wing had turned off at exactly midnight. I returned to the nurses' station. "Helen, did you turn off the televisions remotely?" She looked up from her paperwork. "No, why?" "They all just turned off, at the same time." "That's odd. Maybe a power surge?" "The lights didn't flicker." She frowned. "I'll check with maintenance in the morning." I nodded and returned to the West Wing. At 12:05 a.m., I heard the call lights stop chiming. The call light system at Meadowcrest was audio-based. When a resident pressed their call button, a chime sounded at the nurses' station and a light illuminated above the resident's door. The chime repeated every 15 seconds until a staff member responded. On a typical night, the system chimed intermittently. Residents called for assistance with toileting, pain management, anxiety, insomnia. But at 12:05 a.m., the chime stopped. I waited at the nurses' station for 10 minutes. No calls, no chimes. I checked the call light panel. No lights were illuminated. At 12:20 a.m., I began my third round. I walked the corridor slowly, checking each room. In room 2, both residents were awake. They were sitting upright in their beds facing the door. They were not speaking. They were not moving. They were simply sitting, hands folded in their laps, eyes focused on the doorway. I entered the room. "Mrs. Alvarez? Mr. Brennan? Is everything all right?" Neither of them responded. They did not turn their heads. They did not acknowledge my presence. I approached Mrs. Alvarez's bed. She was an 86-year-old woman with moderate dementia. She typically required prompting for all activities. She rarely initiated conversation. "Mrs. Alvarez, do you need anything?" She did not respond. I checked her pulse. It was steady, normal. I checked her pupils. They were equal and reactive. I checked her breathing. It was calm, unlabored. I turned to Mr. Brennan. He was 91 years old, hard of hearing, minimally verbal. He stared past me, unblinking. I left the room and moved to room 4. Both residents were awake, sitting upright, silent. Room 6, same. Room 8, same. I walked the entire West Wing corridor. Every resident was awake. Every resident was sitting upright. None of them were speaking. None of them responded when I entered their rooms. I returned to the nurse's station. "Helen, something's wrong." She looked up. "What is it?" "Every resident in the West Wing is awake. They're all sitting up in bed. None of them are responding to me." Helen stood and followed me into the corridor. We entered room 2 together. Mrs. Alvarez and Mr. Brennan had not moved. Helen approached Mrs. Alvarez. "Mrs. Alvarez, can you hear me?" No response. Helen checked her pulse, her pupils, her breathing. "She's stable, no acute distress." "Then why isn't she responding?" "I don't know." We checked 3 more rooms. The pattern was identical. Helen returned to the nurse's station and called Marcus. "Marcus, check the East Wing. Tell me if your residents are awake." I heard Marcus respond over the line. "Yeah, they're all awake. I thought it was just a New Year thing." "Are yours awake too?" "Yes, all of them." "What do you want me to do?" "Just monitor. Let me know if anything changes." Helen ended the call and dialed the on-call physician. Dr. Russo answered after 5 rings. Helen explained the situation. Dr. Russo asked her to check vital signs on a sample of residents and call back if there were any abnormalities. Helen and I checked 10 residents. Vital signs were normal across the board. Blood pressure stable, heart rate normal, respiratory rate normal, temperature normal. No signs of distress. Helen called Dr. Russo back. All vitals are stable, no acute issues. Then continue monitoring. If their condition changes, call me immediately. The call ended. Helen returned to the nurse's station. I remained in the corridor. At 12:40 a.m., I noticed the clocks had stopped. There were clocks mounted at both ends of the West Wing corridor. Digital clocks with large red numbers. Both clocks displayed the same time, 12:14 a.m. I checked my watch. It read 12:41 a.m. I walked to the nearest clock and examined it. The display was static. The numbers were not updating. I walked to the other end of the corridor. The second clock also displayed 12:14 a.m. I returned to the nurse's station. "Helen, the clocks in the West Wing have stopped." "What time do they show?" 12:14 a.m. Helen checked the clock above the nurse's station. It displayed 12:43 a.m. "That's strange. I'll add it to the maintenance report." I nodded and returned to the corridor. At 1 a.m., I completed another round. Every resident was still awake, still sitting upright, still silent. I entered room 10. A woman named Iris Caldwell was sitting in bed, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She was staring at the wall opposite her bed. "Mrs. Caldwell, do you need anything?" She did not respond. I stepped closer. "Mrs. Caldwell?" Her lips moved slightly. I leaned in. "What did you say?" She spoke in a whisper, barely audible. "Quiet hours." "I'm sorry, what?" "Quiet hours," she repeated. "Yes, it's quiet hours. You should try to sleep." She did not respond further. I left the room and moved to room 12. A man named Leonard Wells was sitting in the same position. "Mr. Wells, are you feeling all right?" His lips moved. "Quiet hours." I felt a cold pressure at the base of my neck. I checked 3 more rooms. Each resident whispered the same 2 words when I leaned close enough to hear. Quiet hours. I returned to the nurse's station. "Helen, they're all saying the same thing." "What are they saying?" "Quiet hours." Helen looked at me. "That's what the administrator's email said. Minimize noise during quiet hours. I know, But why are they all saying it? I don't know. At 1:30 a.m., the building's ventilation system stopped. I noticed it because the background hum that had been constant since I started my shift suddenly ceased. The air became still. The temperature did not change, but the circulation stopped. Helen called maintenance. No answer. At 2 a.m., the nurse call system deactivated entirely. Helen tested it by pressing a call button in one of the vacant rooms. No chime, no light. We need to contact administration, I said. Helen dialed the facility administrator's cell phone. No answer. She tried the assistant administrator. No answer. She called the corporate emergency line. The line rang continuously without connecting. At 2:30 a.m., I completed another round. Every resident was still awake, still sitting, still silent. I entered room 20. A woman named Evelyn Hart was sitting upright, her eyes fixed on the wall. Mrs. Hart? Her lips moved. I leaned in. Quiet hours, she whispered. Mrs. Hart, what happens during quiet hours? She turned her head slowly and looked directly at me. We listen. Listen to what? The building. I felt the cold pressure spread from my neck to my shoulders. What is the building saying? She did not respond. I left the room and walked back to the nurse's station. At 3 a.m., Marcus called Helen. Helen, the residents in the East Wing are standing. Standing? Where? In the hallway, all of them. They got out of bed and they're standing in the hallway. Are they walking? No, just standing, facing the West Wing. Helen and I walked to the junction between the East and West Wings. The East Wing corridor was full of residents. They stood in their hospital gowns, barefoot, silent, all facing toward the West Wing. Marcus was standing near them, his expression tense. I didn't help them out of bed, he said. They just got up on their own. I tried to redirect them, but they won't respond. Helen approached the nearest resident. Mr. Daniels, please return to your room. Mr. Daniels did not move. Helen tried several more residents. None of them responded. We need to call emergency services, I said. Helen nodded and returned to the nurse's station. She dialed 911. The call connected, but the line was silent. Hello? This is Meadowcrest Residential Care. We need assistance. No response. She hung up and tried again. The same result. At 3:30 a.m., I heard footsteps in the West Wing. I walked back to the corridor. The residents from the West Wing were standing in the hallway. All 42 of them. They had gotten out of bed and were now standing in the corridor facing the East Wing. The two groups of residents stood at opposite ends of the building facing each other across the central junction. Helen, Marcus, and I stood in the middle, surrounded by 84 silent residents. At 4 a.m., the clocks in both wings updated. Simultaneously, they all displayed 4 a.m. The residents turned and walked back to their rooms. They climbed into their beds. They closed their eyes. Within 5 minutes, the entire building was asleep. The ventilation system restarted. The call light system reactivated. The televisions turned on. Helen, Marcus, and I stood in the empty corridor. What just happened? Marcus asked. I don't know, Helen said. I checked the clocks. They were functioning normally. I completed a final round of both wings. Every resident was asleep. Vital signs were stable. No one called out. No one pressed their call button. At 5 a.m., I documented the night in the shift report. All residents resting comfortably, quiet hours observed without incident. Helen read my documentation and nodded. She did not mention the televisions, the clocks, the silence, or the standing residents. Neither did I. At 7 a.m., the day shift arrived. I gave report to the morning CNA. I mentioned nothing unusual. I left the building and drove home. That night, I did not sleep. I kept thinking about what Evelyn Hart had said. We listened to the building. I wondered what the building had been saying. I wondered if it would say it again next year. I did not return to Meadowcrest after that shift. But sometimes, late at night, I think about those residents. All of them awake. All of them listening. And I wonder if they're still waiting for the building to finish speaking. Story 5. The Annual Care Plan Review. I opened the file at 9:42 a.m. on January 3rd and saw the loop immediately. The care plan for Mr. Eugene Voss, room 127, had been updated 17 times in the past 72 hours. Each update referenced a goal that had already been documented in the previous entry. Each entry concluded with a recommendation to schedule a follow-up review. Each follow-up review led back to the original intake assessment. I scrolled through the file, watching the entries cycle through the same objectives, the same interventions, the same projected outcomes. At the bottom of the most recent entry, there was a new note I had not written. Next assigned case manager, Rachel Truman. That was my name. I had not assigned myself to this case. I had never met Eugene Voss. But according to the system, I had been managing his care plan for the past 6 years. I had been a social services case manager at Pinehurst Continuing Care Community for 9 years. My role involved coordinating care plans for residents transitioning between levels of care, facilitating family meetings, and ensuring that each resident's quality of life goals were documented and pursued. January was the busiest month for care plan reviews. Regulatory requirements mandated that all resident care plans be reviewed and updated annually, and most facilities scheduled these reviews in early January to align with the new calendar year. Care plans were comprehensive documents. They included medical histories, cognitive assessments, mobility evaluations, nutritional plans, medication regimens, and psychosocial goals. Each plan was tailored to the individual resident and updated whenever there was a change in status, a hospitalization, a fall, a decline in cognitive function, a family request. My responsibility was to ensure that the care plan accurately reflected the resident's current condition and that all interventions were appropriate, measurable, and person-centered. On January 3rd, I arrived at my office and reviewed my caseload for the week. I was assigned 14 care plan reviews. Most of them were routine updates, minor adjustments to therapy schedules, updates to dietary preferences, revisions to mobility goals. One file, however, was flagged as requiring immediate attention. The flag was labeled Unresolved Loop, Manual Review Required. The resident's name was Eugene Voss, room 127. I did not recognize the name. I searched my memory for any prior interactions. I had no recollection of meeting him, attending a care conference for him, or reviewing his file. I opened the electronic care plan system and accessed his record. The file was extensive, over 300 pages of documentation. I scrolled to the first entry. It was dated 6 years ago, January 3rd. The entry was an initial intake assessment conducted by a case manager named Rachel Truman. I read the entry carefully. Resident Eugene Voss admitted to Pinehurst Continuing Care Community on January 3rd. Initial assessment completed. Resident presence with moderate cognitive impairment, decreased mobility, and limited social engagement. Recommended interventions: physical therapy twice weekly, cognitive stimulation activities daily, social services support for adjustment to facility. Projected goal: improved mobility and increased participation in group activities within 90 days. Follow-up review scheduled for April 3rd. The entry was standard. I moved to the next entry, dated April 3rd. Follow-up review completed. Resident Eugene Voss continues to present with moderate cognitive impairment, decreased mobility, and limited social engagement. Recommended interventions: Physical therapy twice weekly. Cognitive stimulation activities daily. Social services support for adjustment to facility. Projected goal: improved mobility and increased participation in group activities within 90 days. Follow-up review scheduled for July 3rd. The entry was identical. I scrolled through the file. Every 90 days, a follow-up review was documented. Every entry was identical. The same assessment, the same interventions, the same goals, the same case manager, Rachel Truman. I checked the most recent entry, dated January 2nd. Follow-up review completed. Resident Eugene Voss continues to present with moderate cognitive impairment, decreased mobility and limited social engagement. Recommended interventions: physical therapy twice weekly, cognitive stimulation activities daily, social services support for adjustment to facility. Projected goal: improved mobility and increased participation in group activities within 90 days. Follow-up review scheduled for April 3rd. Next assigned case manager, Rachel Truman. I stared at the screen. I checked the staff directory. I searched for Rachel Truman. The system returned one result. Rachel Truman, Social Services Case Manager. Employed since January 3rd, 6 years ago. Current status: active. I checked the employment records. My hire date was listed as January 3rd, 9 years ago. I had been employed at Pinehurst for 9 years, not 6. I accessed my personnel file. My hire date was confirmed as 9 years ago. I returned to Eugene Voss's care plan. I checked the case manager assignment log. According to the log, Rachel Truman had been assigned to Eugene Voss on January 3rd, 6 years ago. The assignment had never been transferred to another case manager. I checked my current caseload. Eugene Voss was not listed. I checked the archived caseload records. Eugene Voss was not listed. But according to his care plan, I had been managing his case for 6 years. I stood and walked to the director's office. The director of social services was a woman named Margaret Lynn. She had been with the facility for 12 years. I knocked on her door. "Come in." I entered and sat down. "Margaret, I need clarification on a case. Eugene Voss, room 127. The system is showing that I've been managing his care plan for 6 years, but I have no recollection of it, and he's not listed in my active or archived caseload." Margaret frowned. "Eugene Voss, I don't recognize that name. He's listed as a current resident." "What's his room number?" 127. Margaret opened the resident directory on her computer. She entered the room number. Room 127 is listed as vacant. The care plan shows him as active. "Let me check the census." She accessed the facility-wide census report. Room 127, vacant since December 28th. The previous resident was discharged to hospice. "Can you access Eugene Voss's file directly?" Margaret entered his name into the system. "No results." "That's impossible. I'm looking at his care plan right now." "Send me a screenshot." I returned to my office, captured a screenshot of Eugene's care plan, and emailed it to Margaret. She called me 2 minutes later. "Rachel, I received the screenshot, but when I search for Eugene Voss in the system, nothing appears. How is that possible?" "I don't know. Can you print the care plan?" I clicked print. The system processed the request, then returned an error message. "File cannot be printed. Document contains recursive references." I called Margaret back. "The system won't let me print it. Try exporting it as a PDF." I attempted to export the file. The same error appeared. "Margaret, I can view the file on screen, but I can't print or export it." There was a pause. "Come back to my office. Bring your laptop." I disconnected my laptop from the docking station and carried it to Margaret's office. I placed it on her desk and opened Eugene's care plan. Margaret leaned forward and read the screen. "This is your documentation," she said. "I know, but I didn't write it. It's signed with your credentials. I understand, but I have no memory of writing any of these entries." Margaret scrolled through the file. Every entry is identical. The same assessment, the same goals, every 90 days for 6 years. Yes, that's not possible. A resident's condition changes, goals are achieved or revised, care plans evolve. I know. Margaret checked the timestamps on the entries. These entries were documented at 9 a.m. on the scheduled review dates. Every 90 days. Exactly. I reviewed my calendar. I have no appointments scheduled with Eugene Voss. I have no documented contact with him. Margaret closed the file and opened the staff activity log. She filtered the log by my user credentials and searched for entries related to Eugene Voss. The log displayed 73 entries. Each entry corresponded to a care plan update. Each entry was time-stamped at 9 a.m. on the scheduled review date. Margaret clicked on the most recent entry. It displayed the following information. User, Rachel Truman. Action, care plan updated. Resident, Eugene Voss. Date, January 2nd. Time, 9 a.m. Duration, 14 minutes. You were logged into the system on January 2nd at 9 a.m., Margaret said. I was here at 9 a.m. I was reviewing other files. Do you remember what you were doing at that exact time? I thought back. January 2nd had been a busy day. I had completed 3 care plan reviews in the morning. I had attended a family meeting at 10:30 a.m. I had documented those activities in my calendar. I was reviewing a care plan for a resident named Dorothy Lang. I remember completing that file around 9:15 a.m. Margaret checked the activity log. The log shows you accessing Dorothy Lang's file at 8:45 a.m. You closed it at 9:14 a.m. At 9 a.m., you simultaneously accessed Eugene Voss's file. That's impossible. I can't access 2 files at the same time. Margaret refreshed the log. The entries remained. According to this, you were working on both files concurrently. I felt the cold pressure return to the base of my skull. Margaret, I need to see room 127. It's vacant. I know, but I need to see it. Margaret stood. We walked together to the first floor and located room 127. The door was open, the room was empty, the bed was stripped. The surfaces were clean. There was no indication that anyone had occupied the space recently. I stepped inside and looked around. The room was identical to every other semi-private room in the facility. 1 bed, 1 closet, 1 window overlooking the courtyard. I walked to the closet and opened it. Empty. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I returned to the main room. There's nothing here, Margaret said. I nodded. We returned to Margaret's office. Rachel, I'm going to contact IT and have them review the care plan system. This might be a database error. Okay. In the meantime, do not access Eugene Voss's file again. If the system is generating recursive entries, interacting with the file might make it worse. Understood. I returned to my office and resumed my scheduled care plan reviews. At 11:30 a.m., I received an email notification from the care plan system. Subject, follow-up review required, Eugene Voss. I opened the email. Your scheduled follow-up review for resident Eugene Voss is overdue. Please complete the review and update the care plan by end of business today. I checked the care plan schedule. Eugene's next review was listed as due on April 3rd, 3 months away. I deleted the email. At 1:15 p.m., I received another notification. Subject, follow-up review required, Eugene Voss. I deleted it without opening it. At 2:45 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID displayed room 127. I stared at the phone. Room 127 was vacant. I answered the call. This is Rachel Truman. There was silence on the line. Then a faint sound, breathing, slow, steady. "Hello?" I said. The breathing continued. "Who is this?" The line disconnected. I hung up and called the facility operator. "This is Rachel Truman. I just received a call from room 127. That room is vacant. Can you check if there's a phone malfunction?" "Sure, one moment." I waited. The operator returned. "Rachel, room 127 doesn't have an active phone line. The phone was disconnected when the room was vacated. I just received a call from that room." "That's not possible. The line is physically disconnected." I ended the call. At 4:30 p.m. I received another email. Subject: Care Plan Review Overdue, Eugene Voss. I opened it. "Your care plan review for resident Eugene Voss is now 45 days overdue. Failure to complete the review will result in a procedural violation. Please update the care plan immediately. Next assigned case manager, Rachel Truman." I checked the date, January 3rd. The email claimed the review was 45 days overdue. That would place the last completed review in mid-November. I accessed Eugene's file. The most recent entry was dated January 2nd. I closed the file and locked my computer. I left the building at 5 p.m. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the care plan, the identical entries, the loop that never concluded, the system assigning me to a case I had no memory of. The next morning I arrived at my office and found a printed document on my desk. It was Eugene Voss's care plan, all 300 pages. I had not printed it. The system had refused to print it when I attempted it the previous day. I picked up the document and flipped to the final page. There was a new entry dated January 4th, this morning. Follow-up review completed. Resident Eugene Voss continues to present with moderate cognitive impairment, decreased mobility, and limited social engagement. Recommended interventions: physical therapy twice weekly, cognitive stimulation activities daily, social services support for adjustment to facility. Projected goal: improved mobility and increased participation in group activities within 90 days. Follow-up review scheduled for April 4th. Next assigned case manager, Rachel Truman. The entry was signed with my credentials. I checked the timestamp, 6:47 a.m. I had not been in the office at 6:47 a.m. I had arrived at 8:30 a.m. I accessed the care plan system and opened Eugene's file. The new entry was there. I checked the activity log. User, Rachel Truman. Action care plan updated. Resident, Eugene Voss. Date, January 4th. Time, 6:47 a.m. Duration, 14 minutes. I minimized the window and sat in silence. I did not access Eugene Voss's file again. But the emails continued, every day, reminding me that the review was overdue, reminding me that I was the assigned case manager. On January 7th, I received a call from Margaret. "Rachel, IT reviewed the care plan system. They found a recursive loop in Eugene Voss's file. The system is generating automated updates based on the initial intake entry. The loop is tied to your user credentials. How do I stop it? They're working on it. In the meantime, they recommend you avoid accessing the file. I haven't accessed it in 3 days. Good. They'll have a fix by next week." The call ended. On January 10th, I received a final email from the care plan system. Subject: Care plan archived. Eugene Voss. I opened it. The care plan for resident Eugene Voss has been archived due to discharge. Thank you for your service. Case assignment transferred to next scheduled case manager, Rachel Truman. I checked the resident census. Room 127 remained vacant. I checked the care plan system. Eugene Voss's file was no longer accessible. I checked the activity log. All entries related to Eugene Voss had been deleted. I closed the system and returned to my scheduled caseload. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that care plan. The goals that were never achieved. The reviews that never concluded. The loop that assigned me to a resident who never existed. And I wonder if I'm still managing his case, if somewhere in the system the entries are still being written, if the follow-up reviews are still being scheduled, if I'm still the next assigned case manager. Some care plans never conclude, some goals loop indefinitely, and some of us are assigned to cases that exist only in the space between intake and discharge. Story 6. Do not resuscitate. Revised. I was reviewing the DNR renewals at my desk when I found the order dated tomorrow. The document was formatted correctly. Patient name, date of birth, medical record number, attending physician's signature. But the date at the top of the form read January 6th. It was January 5th. I checked the timestamp on the electronic file. Uploaded January 5th, 2:23 p.m. I checked the signature block. The attending physician was listed as Dr. Catherine Merrill. That was my name. The signature matched my handwriting precisely down to the slight leftward slant I had developed after a wrist injury 3 years ago. I had not signed this order. I had not reviewed this patient. I had not written tomorrow's date on any document. But there it was, waiting in the system already completed. I had been a geriatric physician at Silverwood Extended Care for 14 years. My practice focused on residents with complex medical needs, many of them requiring palliative or end-of-life care. One of my responsibilities was reviewing and renewing do not resuscitate orders. DNR orders were legal documents that specified a resident's wishes regarding cardiopulmonary resuscitation in the event of cardiac or respiratory arrest. In our state, DNR orders expired annually and required renewal by the attending physician. The renewal process was straightforward. I met with the resident or their healthcare proxy, reviewed their current medical status, discussed their goals of care, and documented their decision. If the resident chose to continue the DNR order, I signed the renewal form and uploaded it to the electronic medical record. The facility's policy required all DNR renewals to be completed by January 7th. January 5th was a busy day. I had scheduled 6 DNR renewals. I completed the first 3 by noon. The residents were alert, capable of making their own decisions, and chose to renew their orders without hesitation. I documented each conversation and signed the corresponding forms. At 2 p.m., I took a break and returned to my office to review the remaining renewals. I accessed the DNR tracking system, which listed all residents with expiring orders. 3 names remained on my list. I clicked on the first name, Margaret Winslow, room 314. I reviewed her medical record. She was 87 years old with advanced dementia and congestive heart failure. Her healthcare proxy was her daughter, Diane. I had spoken with Diane the previous week. She had confirmed that Margaret's DNR order should be renewed. I opened the DNR order form and prepared to complete it. The system displayed a notification. DNR order for Margaret Winslow has already been renewed. Document uploaded January 5th, 2:23 p.m. I frowned. I had not renewed Margaret's DNR order yet. I was about to do it now. I clicked on the uploaded document. The form opened. It was fully completed. Patient name, Margaret Winslow. Date of birth, March 14th. Medical record number, correct. DNR order confirmed. Attending physician, Dr. Catherine Merrill. Signature present. Date, January 6th. I stared at the date. January 6th was tomorrow. I checked the system clock. January 5th, 2:31 p.m. I examined the signature closely. It was mine. The pressure, the slant, the formation of the letters, it was identical to my handwriting. I accessed the document metadata, uploaded by Dr. Catherine Merrill. Upload date, January 5th, 2:23 p.m. I had been in my office at 2:23 p.m. I had been reviewing lab results for another patient. I had not accessed Margaret Winslow's file. I checked my activity log. The log displayed every action I had taken in the electronic medical record system. At 2:23 p.m., the log showed that I had uploaded a DNR renewal form for Margaret Winslow. I minimized the log and accessed the second name on my list, Harold Finch, room 218. The same notification appeared. DNR order already renewed. Document uploaded January 5th, 2:23 p.m. Signature, Dr. Catherine Merrill. Date, January 6th. I opened the third name, Evelyn Cross, room 421. Same result. All 3 DNR renewals had been completed. All 3 were dated January 6th. All 3 were signed with my signature. All 3 had been uploaded at 2:23 p.m. today. I picked up my desk phone and dialed the medical records department. Medical records, this is Linda. Linda, this is Dr. Merrill. I'm reviewing DNR renewals and I'm seeing documents dated tomorrow. Can you explain how that's possible? Dated tomorrow? What do you mean? The DNR forms I'm reviewing are dated January 6th. Today is January 5th. There was a pause. Can you send me a screenshot? I captured a screenshot of Margaret Winslow's DNR form and emailed it to Linda. She called me back 2 minutes later. Dr. Merrill, I'm looking at the screenshot. The date field shows January 6th, but that's just a typo, right? You probably meant to write January 5th. I didn't write it. I didn't sign this form. But your signature is on the document. I know, but I didn't sign it. Another pause. Dr. Merrill, the system log shows that you uploaded this document at 2:23 p.m. today. I was reviewing a different patient at that time. Can you verify that? I checked my notes. At 2:23 p.m. I had been documenting a medication adjustment for a resident named Thomas Lang. I had saved the note at 2:25 p.m. Yes, I was documenting a medication change for Thomas Lang. Let me check the system log. I waited. Linda returned. Dr. Merrill, the log shows 2 simultaneous actions at 2:23 p.m. You saved the medication note for Thomas Lang, and you uploaded the DNR form for Margaret Winslow. That's impossible. I can't perform 2 actions simultaneously. I agree, but that's what the log shows. Can you check the other 2 DNR forms I uploaded? Which residents? Harold Finch and Evelyn Cross. I heard typing. Both forms were uploaded at 2:23 p.m. today. Both are dated January 6th. I ended the call and sat in silence. I opened Margaret's DNR form again and examined the signature. I retrieved a recent prescription I had signed and compared the 2 signatures. They were identical. I accessed the DNR renewal checklist. According to the checklist, I was required to meet with the resident or their proxy, discuss the decision, and document the conversation before signing the form. I checked my calendar. I had not scheduled meetings with Margaret, Harold, or Evelyn's families today. I called Diane Winslow, Margaret's daughter. She answered after 3 rings. Hello? Diane, this is Dr. Merrill. I'm calling about your mother's DNR renewal. Oh, yes, I thought we already handled that last week. We discussed it last week, but I hadn't completed the paperwork yet. I'm calling to confirm that you still want to proceed with the renewal. Yes, absolutely. Mom wouldn't want resuscitation. Good. I'll finalize the form today. I thought you already did. I received an email confirmation this afternoon. I felt the cold pressure settle into my chest. What time did you receive the email? Let me check. It came in at 2:26 p.m. What did the email say? It said the DNR renewal for Margaret Winslow had been completed and uploaded to her medical record. Did it mention the date? Let me look. Yes, it says the renewal is effective January 6th. Thank you, Diane. I'll follow up with you if I need anything else. I ended the call. I dialed Harold Finch's healthcare proxy, a woman named Susan. She confirmed that she had received a similar email at 2:26 p.m. I called Evelyn Cross's son, Michael, same result. All three families had received automated confirmation emails stating that the DNR renewals had been completed and were effective January 6th. I accessed the email system and searched my sent folder. There were no emails to Diane, Susan, or Michael. I checked the automated notifications log. The system had sent confirmation emails to all three families at 2:26 p.m., triggered by the upload of the DNR forms. But the forms were dated tomorrow. I returned to Margaret's DNR form and attempted to edit it. The system displayed an error message. This document cannot be modified. Signature and date are legally binding. I tried to delete the form. The same error appeared. I called Linda in medical records again. Linda, I need to delete the DNR forms I uploaded at 2:23 p.m. You can't delete a signed DNR order. It's a legal document. The forms are dated tomorrow. They're invalid. Dr. Merrill, the date on the form is the effective date, not the signing date. You can sign a DNR renewal in advance as long as it's within the renewal window. I didn't sign these forms. There was a long pause. Dr. Merrill, your signature is on the documents. Your user credentials uploaded them. The families have been notified. The forms are legally binding. What if something happens to one of these residents tonight? Then the DNR order is not yet in effect. The current order expires at midnight tonight. The renewed order takes effect at midnight tomorrow. So if one of them codes tonight, we're supposed to resuscitate them? That's correct. The current DNR order is still active until midnight. I ended the call. I sat at my desk and stared at the screen. I opened the facility-wide census and filtered for residents with expiring DNR orders. 3 names appeared: Margaret Winslow, Harold Finch, Evelyn Cross. All 3 were on my list. All 3 had renewed orders dated tomorrow. I checked their current medical status. Margaret Winslow, stable, no acute issues. Harold Finch, stable, no acute issues. Evelyn Cross, stable, no acute issues. I minimized the census and returned to my schedule. At 6 p.m., I completed my rounds and left the facility. At 11:43 p.m., I received a call from the night shift charge nurse. Dr. Merrill, this is Nurse Stevens. We have a code in progress in room 314, Margaret Winslow. What's her status? Unresponsive, no pulse. We initiated CPR per protocol. Her DNR order is still active. I checked the chart. The current order expired at midnight. The renewed order doesn't take effect until tomorrow. Midnight hasn't happened yet. It's 11:43 p.m. I know, but we're required to initiate resuscitation if the code happens before midnight. I felt the pressure tighten in my chest. Continue CPR. I'm on my way. I arrived at Silverwood at 12:07 a.m. I went directly to room 314. The code team was still working. Compressions, ventilation, medication administration. Nurse Stevens saw me and stepped aside. We've been at this for 24 minutes, no response. I checked the monitor. Asystole. Time of initial code? 11:41 p.m. Stop compressions. The team stopped. I checked for a pulse. None. I checked the monitor. Flat line. Time of death, 12:09 a.m., January 6th. I stepped back. The team began post-mortem procedures. I walked to the nurse's station and accessed Margaret's chart. The DNR renewal I had not signed was now active. Effective date, January 6th. I checked the time of death entry, 12:09 a.m., January 6th. I checked the DNR order. It was valid. I closed the chart. At 1:15 a.m., I received another call. Dr. Merrill, code in room 218, Harold Finch. I returned to the second floor. Harold was unresponsive, no pulse. When did the code start? 12:58 a.m., I checked his DNR order. effective January 6th. Do not resuscitate. Call it. Time of death 1:15 a.m. I left room 218 and walked back to the nurse's station. At 2:37 a.m., Nurse Stevens called me again. Dr. Merrill, Evelyn Cross in room 421, unresponsive, no pulse. I didn't go to the room. Check her DNR order. It's active as of January 6th. Then do not resuscitate. Document the time of death. Understood. I hung up. I sat in the nurse's station and accessed the DNR tracking system. All 3 residents had died within 3 hours of the renewed orders taking effect. I checked the dates on the forms again. January 6th. I checked the time. 2:41 a.m. January 6th. I reviewed the upload timestamp. January 5th, 2:23 p.m. I had signed the orders before the residents died. I had signed them before the date on the forms. I opened my sent emails. There was one new message sent at 2:23 p.m. yesterday. 2. Medical records. Subject, DNR renewals completed. Body, please see attached DNR renewal forms for Margaret Winslow, Harold Finch, and Evelyn Cross. All renewals effective January 6th. I had not written that email. I checked the metadata. Sent by Dr. Catherine Merrill. I closed the email and logged out of the system. I sat in the empty nurse's station until morning. At 7 a.m., the day shift arrived. I gave a brief report and left the building. I did not return to Silverwood after that night. But sometimes I think about those 3 forms. The signatures I didn't write. The date I hadn't reached yet. The deaths that followed precisely on schedule. And I wonder how many other orders I've signed that I don't remember. How many dates I've written that haven't arrived yet. Some documents are completed before we sign them. Some deaths are scheduled before they occur. And some of us have already written the endings we haven't lived through yet. Story 7. The Wing That Didn't Celebrate. I reviewed the facility-wide activity log at 8:37 a.m. on January 2nd and noticed the gap immediately. Every wing had reported New Year celebrations. The West Wing had documented a resident gathering in the common room. The East Wing had logged a champagne toast at midnight. The South Wing had noted televised countdown viewing. But the North Wing had submitted no activity reports for December 31st or January 1st. No event logs, no incident reports, no documentation of any kind. I checked the staffing records. 3 nurses and 2 aides had been assigned to the North Wing for New Year's Eve. All 5 had clocked in at their scheduled times. None of them had clocked out. I called the North Wing directly. The line rang continuously without answer. I walked to the North Wing myself. The lights were on. The doors were unlocked. But when I stepped inside, I realized the clocks were still displaying December 31st. I had been the administrator of Willowbrook Senior Living Facility for 16 years. I managed operations for a 4-wing residential care facility housing 180 residents. Each wing operated semi-independently with dedicated nursing staff, activity coordinators, and support personnel. My role involved oversight of regulatory compliance, budgeting, staffing, and quality assurance. I reviewed daily reports from each wing to monitor resident safety, staff performance, and facility operations. New Year's Eve was typically an active night. Each wing planned celebrations tailored to the preferences and capabilities of their residents. Some wings hosted formal gatherings with music and refreshments. Others organized quiet viewing parties for the televised countdown. Activity reports were submitted the following morning, documenting attendance, any incidents, and staff observations. On January 2nd, I arrived at my office at 8 a.m. and began reviewing the consolidated activity log. The log compiled reports from all 4 wings. I scanned the entries sequentially. West Wing. 32 residents attended a gathering in the common room. Sparkling cider served. No incidents. All residents returned to rooms by 12:30 a.m. East Wing, 18 residents participated in a champagne toast at midnight, supervised by 2 staff members. 1 minor spill. No injuries. Event concluded at 12:45 a.m. South Wing, 27 residents viewed the televised countdown. 4 residents requested early return to rooms. No incidents. North Wing, no entry. I scrolled down, assuming the report had been filed separately. There was no additional entry for the North Wing. I accessed the individual wing activity logs and opened the North Wing file. The most recent entry was dated December 30th. Afternoon activities, bingo and common room, 12 residents participated, no incidents. There were no entries for December 31st or January 1st. I checked the incident report system. No reports filed by North Wing staff during that period. I accessed the staffing records. 5 staff members had been assigned to the North Wing on December 31st. 3 registered nurses and 2 certified nursing assistants. I reviewed their time records. All 5 had clocked in at their scheduled times between 6:45 p.m. and 7 p.m. None of them had clocked out. I checked the current time. 8:42 a.m., January 2nd. The North Wing staff had been on duty for over 37 hours without clocking out. I picked up my desk phone and dialed the North Wing nurses' station. The line rang and rang. After 20 rings, I hung up. I tried again. Same result. I dialed the extension for the North Wing activity coordinator. No answer. I accessed the building's intercom system and paged the North Wing charge nurse. Nurse Ellen Pryor, please contact administration immediately. I waited. No response. I stood and left my office. The North Wing was located on the opposite side of the building from my administrative suite. I walked through the central corridor, past the dining hall, past the main lobby, and approached the North Wing entrance. The double doors were propped open as they typically were during daytime hours. I stepped through and entered the North Wing hallway. The lighting was normal. The air was still. The hallway was empty. I walked toward the nurses' station, which was located midway down the corridor. As I approached, I glanced at the wall-mounted clock. It displayed 11:58 p.m. I stopped and checked my watch. 8:49 a.m. I looked back at the clock. 11:58 p.m. I continued to the nurses' station. The desk was empty. A computer monitor displayed the resident tracking system, but no one was seated at the workstation. I checked the desk phone. It was functional. The line was active. I picked up the handset and dialed my own office extension. The call connected. I heard my office phone ring in the distance. I hung up. I walked down the corridor, checking each resident room. The first room, room 101, housed 2 residents. Both were in their beds. Both were asleep. I moved to room 103. Same situation. Room 105. Same. I continued down the hall, checking every room. All residents were present. All were asleep or resting quietly. I reached the end of the corridor and checked the clock mounted near the emergency exit. 11:58 p.m. I walked back to the nurses' station and accessed the computer. I logged in using my administrator credentials and opened the North Wing resident log. The most recent entry was dated December 31st, 11:45 p.m. All residents resting, evening medications administered, no issues. The entry was signed by Nurse Ellen Pryor. I checked the time. The system clock displayed 8:53 a.m. January 2nd, but the wall clock still displayed 11:58 p.m. I stood and walked to the staff break room. The door was closed. I opened it. 3 nurses and 2 aides were seated at the table. They were not speaking. They were not moving. They were staring at the wall-mounted television. The television was on, displaying a frozen image of a New Year's countdown. The screen showed a crowd in Times Square, confetti suspended mid-air. The clock tower displaying 11:59 p.m. I stepped into the room. "Ellen?" Nurse Pryor did not respond. She continued staring at the screen. I approached her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Ellen, can you hear me?" She blinked slowly but did not turn her head. I stepped back and addressed the group. "Can anyone hear me?" No response. I checked the television. It was plugged in. The power button was illuminated. But the image on the screen was static. No movement, no sound. I unplugged the television. The screen went dark. The staff members did not react. I walked to the window and looked outside. The courtyard was visible from this vantage point. I could see the walking paths, the benches, the dormant garden beds. The courtyard was covered in snow. I checked the weather report on my phone. There had been no snow in the past week. The forecast showed clear skies and temperatures in the mid-40s. But the courtyard outside the north wing was blanketed in snow. I returned to the hallway and walked back to the nurses' station. I picked up the desk phone and dialed the facility's main line. The receptionist answered. "Willowbrook Senior Living, this is Angela." "Angela, this is Mr. Harding. I'm in the north wing. I need you to send someone here immediately." "Is everything all right?" "No. The staff is unresponsive and the clocks are showing the wrong time." There was a pause. "Mr. Harding, what do you mean the clocks are showing the wrong time?" "They're displaying 11:58 p.m. It's almost 9 a.m. "That's odd. Do you want me to contact maintenance?" "Yes, and send a nurse from another wing. I need someone to assess the north wing staff." "I'll send Nurse Hollis from the west wing." "Thank you." I hung up and waited. At 9:07 a.m., Nurse Hollis arrived. She was a senior nurse with 23 years of experience. I met her at the entrance to the north wing. "Nurse Hollis, thank you for coming." "What's going on?" "The north wing staff is unresponsive. They're sitting in the break room staring at a television. They won't respond to verbal prompts." Nurse Hollis frowned. "Show me." I led her to the break room. The staff members were still seated at the table, still staring at the now dark television screen. Nurse Hollis approached Ellen Pryor and checked her pulse. Pulse is normal, 68 beats per minute. She checked Ellen's pupils. Reactive and equal. She performed a sternal rub. Ellen did not respond. Nurse Hollis stepped back. "This is catatonia, or some kind of dissociative state. We need to call an ambulance." "For all 5 of them?" "Yes, this is a medical emergency." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The call connected. 911, what is your emergency?" "This is Daniel Harding, administrator at Willowbrook Senior Living. I have 5 staff members experiencing an acute medical event. They're unresponsive but stable." "What is the nature of the medical event?" "They appear to be in a catatonic state. They're not responding to verbal or physical stimuli." "Are they breathing?" "Yes. Vitals appear stable." "I'm dispatching paramedics now. Stay on the line." I remained on the line while Nurse Hollis continued assessing the staff members. At 9:21 a.m., paramedics arrived. They evaluated each staff member and confirmed Nurse Hollis's assessment. All 5 were unresponsive but medically stable. The paramedics recommended transport to the hospital for further evaluation. "All 5? I asked. "Yes, sir. We can't determine the cause here. They need imaging and lab work." "Understood." The paramedics prepared to transport the staff members. As they began loading the first staff member onto a stretcher, I heard a sound. A faint chime. I turned toward the hallway. The wall clock had changed. It now displayed 12 a.m. I walked to the clock and stared at it. 12 a.m. Midnight. I checked my watch. 9:26 a.m. I walked back to the nurse's station and checked the computer. The system clock displayed 9:26 a.m. The wall clock displayed 12 a.m. I returned to the break room. The paramedics were wheeling the second staff member out. Nurse Hollis approached me. "Mr. Harding, the residents are waking up." "What?" "The residents. I checked a few rooms while the paramedics were working. They're waking up. All of them." I followed her into the corridor. We entered room 101. Both residents were sitting up in bed, blinking, disoriented. "Good morning," Nurse Hollis said. "How are you feeling?" One of the residents, a woman named Clara, looked around the room. "What time is it?" "It's 9:30 a.m. It feels like I just fell asleep." We checked 3 more rooms. Every resident was awake. Every resident reported the same sensation. They felt as though they had just fallen asleep moments ago. I returned to the nurse's station and accessed the resident log. I scrolled through the previous entries, looking for any indication of unusual behavior. There was nothing. At 9:45 a.m., the paramedics finished transporting the staff members. The north wing was now empty of nursing staff. Nurse Hollis and I remained to monitor the residents. At 10 a.m., I received a call from the hospital. "Mr. Harding, this is Dr. Lansing at County General. I'm evaluating the 5 staff members you sent over." "What's their condition?" "Stable. All neurological exams are normal. Labs are normal. Imaging is normal, but they're still unresponsive." "Do you have any idea what caused this?" "No. There's no toxicological explanation, no infectious process, no structural abnormality. They're simply unresponsive." "How long will you keep them?" "We'll monitor them for at least 24 hours. If their condition doesn't change, we may need to transfer them to a psychiatric facility." I ended the call and returned to the north wing. At 10:30 a.m., the wall clock updated again. 12:01 a.m. 1 minute past midnight, I checked the time. 10:30 a.m. I walked to the window and looked outside. The snow in the courtyard was gone. I returned to the hallway and checked the residents. They were going about their normal routines, eating breakfast, watching television, speaking with each other. None of them mentioned the missing New Year celebration. None of them asked why the staff had been replaced. At 11 a.m., I left the north wing and returned to my office. I reviewed the activity log again. The north wing entry was still blank. I drafted an incident report documenting the events of the morning. I submitted it to the corporate office and the state regulatory agency. 3 days later, I received a response. Incident reviewed. No regulatory violations identified. Recommend continued monitoring of North Wing operations. The 5 staff members remained hospitalized for 6 days. On January 8th, they were discharged. All 5 returned to work on January 9th. I met with each of them individually. None of them remembered New Year's Eve. None of them remembered sitting in the break room. None of them remembered the frozen television screen. They remembered clocking in at 7 p.m. on December 31st. They remembered beginning their shift. Then they remembered waking up in the hospital 6 days later. I asked Ellen Pryor if she had any recollection of the time between those 2 events. She said no. I asked if she remembered the North Wing clocks displaying 11:58 p.m. She said no. I asked if she remembered the residents refusing to celebrate the New Year. She looked at me and said, "The residents didn't celebrate?" "No," I said, "they didn't." "Why not?" "I don't know." Ellen returned to her duties. The other staff members did the same. The North Wing resumed normal operations. But sometimes, late at night, I walked to the North Wing and checked the clocks. They display the correct time now. But I remember the way they looked on January 2nd, frozen at 11:58 p.m., waiting for a year that refused to begin. Some wings don't celebrate the New Year. Some clocks refuse to move forward, and some of us are still waiting for midnight to arrive. Story 8, January 7th. Discharge Summary. I opened the discharge file at 9:12 a.m. and saw the pattern immediately. The resident, Arthur Hayes, room 231, had been discharged 6 times in the past 7 days. Each discharge summary was identical. Resident transferred to hospice care. Discharge date, January 7th. Discharge time, 10 a.m. Bed status, available for reassignment. I checked the bed assignment log. Room 231 was listed as occupied. Current resident, Arthur Hayes. I checked the temperature sensor embedded in the mattress, a system we use to monitor bed occupancy and prevent falls. The sensor reported bed occupied, surface temperature 98.4 degrees. I walked to room 231. The bed was made. The room was empty, but the mattress was warm. I had been a hospice transition nurse at Evergreen Care Center for 12 years. My role involved coordinating the transfer of residents from skilled nursing care to hospice services when their medical condition progressed to end-of-life status. The process required careful documentation, family communication, and collaboration with hospice agencies. January was a busy month. Many families postponed hospice decisions until after the holidays. The week following New Year typically saw an increase in hospice admissions and discharges. A hospice discharge occurred when a resident's condition had deteriorated to the point where curative treatment was no longer appropriate, and the resident or their healthcare proxy elected to pursue comfort-focused care. The resident was transferred to a hospice facility or enrolled in home hospice services. I completed the discharge paperwork, coordinated the transfer, and ensured that the resident's room was prepared for the next admission. On January 7th, I arrived at my office and reviewed the list of pending discharges. One name appeared at the top of the list: Arthur Hayes, room 231. The discharge was scheduled for 10 a.m. I accessed Arthur's file to review his medical history. Arthur was 84 years old. He had been diagnosed with metastatic lung cancer 18 months prior. He had declined rapidly over the past 3 weeks. His physician had recommended hospice enrollment, and Arthur's daughter, Linda, had agreed. I had spoken with Linda on January 1st. She had selected a hospice facility located 10 miles from Evergreen. The transfer was scheduled for January 7th at 10 a.m. I reviewed the discharge summary template and began completing the required fields. As I worked, I noticed an alert in Arthur's file. Discharge summary already completed. Document uploaded January 1st, 9:15 a.m. I frowned. I had not completed Arthur's discharge summary yet. The discharge was scheduled for today, not 6 days ago. I clicked on the uploaded document. The summary opened. It was fully completed. Resident name, Arthur Hayes. Discharge date, January 7th. Discharge time, 10 a.m. Receiving facility, Meadowview Hospice. Transportation arranged, yes. Family notified, yes. Bed status, available for reassignment. Completed by Nurse Caroline West, that was my name. I checked the upload timestamp, January 1st, 9:15 a.m. I reviewed my activity log for January 1st. At 9:15 a.m., I had been conducting a family meeting for a different resident. I had not accessed Arthur's file. I minimized the summary and checked the discharge log. Arthur Hayes appeared 6 times. Discharge 1, January 1st, 10 a.m. Discharge 2, January 2nd, 10 a.m. Discharge 3, January 3rd, 10 a.m. Discharge 4, January 4th, 10 a.m. Discharge 5, January 5th, 10 a.m. Discharge 6, January 6th, 10 a.m. Each entry was identical. Same discharge time, same receiving facility, same transportation arrangements, same notation. Bed status, available for reassignment. I accessed the bed assignment log. Room 231 was listed as occupied. Current resident, Arthur Hayes. Admission date, 18 months prior. Discharge date, none. I checked the current date, January 7th. Arthur's discharge was scheduled for today at 10 a.m., but according to the log, he had already been discharged 6 times. I picked up my desk phone and dialed the nurse's station for the second floor where room 231 was located. Second floor, this is Denise. Denise, this is Caroline. I need you to check room 231 for me. I'm seeing conflicting information about Arthur Hayes. Sure. Give me a minute. I waited. Denise returned. Caroline, room 231 is empty. The bed is made. It looks like it's ready for a new admission. Is there any sign that Arthur was recently in the room? No. The closet is empty. The bathroom is empty. It's completely cleared out. When was the room last occupied? Let me check the log. According to the log, Arthur Hayes is the current resident, but the room is definitely empty. Can you check the bed sensor? Hold on. I heard her typing. The sensor is showing the bed as occupied. Temperature reading is 98.4 degrees. I felt the cold pressure settle into my chest. The bed is warm? According to the sensor, yes. But you're saying the bed is empty? Correct. No one is in the bed. Denise, I'm coming up. I left my office and took the elevator to the second floor. I walked to room 231 and entered. The room was as Denise had described. The bed was neatly made. The closet was empty. The bathroom was empty. No personal belongings. No indication that anyone had occupied the space recently. I approached the bed and placed my hand on the mattress. It was warm, not ambient warm, body heat warm. I pulled back the blanket and touched the sheet. It was also warm. Denise entered the room behind me. Do you feel that? Yes. How is that possible? No one is in the bed. I replaced the blanket and stepped back. Has anyone been in this room today? Not that I've seen. I checked the room during my morning rounds at 7 a.m. It was empty then too. I accessed the bed sensor data on my phone. The sensor transmitted real-time occupancy information to the facility's monitoring system. I pulled up the data for room 231. The sensor had been reporting continuous occupancy since January 1st. Bed occupied, yes. Surface temperature, 98.4 degrees. Duration, 6 days, 23 hours. I showed Denise the data. That doesn't make sense, she said. I've checked this room every day this week. It's been empty every time. Did you ever see Arthur Hayes this week? No. I assumed he had already been discharged. I returned to my office and accessed Arthur's medical record. I reviewed the nursing notes from the past 7 days. January 1st. Resident transferred to hospice care. Discharge completed at 10 a.m. Family accompanied resident to receiving facility. January 2nd. Resident transferred to hospice care. Discharge completed at 10 a.m. Family accompanied resident to receiving facility. The notes were identical for each day. I checked the author of the notes. All of them were signed by nursing staff from the second floor, different nurses each day. But the content was identical. I called Linda Hayes, Arthur's daughter. She answered after 2 rings. Hello? Linda, this is Caroline West from Evergreen Care Center. I'm calling about your father's hospice transfer. Oh yes, is everything ready for today? I wanted to confirm that the transfer is scheduled for today at 10 a.m. Yes, that's correct. I'll be there to accompany him. Linda, has anyone from Evergreen contacted you about a transfer earlier this week? No. Why? I'm seeing some conflicting documentation. I wanted to verify that the transfer hasn't already occurred. No, it's scheduled for today. I've been planning to take the morning off work to be there. Okay, thank you for confirming. I ended the call. I reviewed the discharge summaries again. Each summary listed the same discharge time, 10 a.m. Each summary listed the same date, January 7th. but the upload timestamps ranged from January 1st to January 6th. I accessed the transportation log. Hospice transfers required coordination with a medical transport company. I checked the log for Arthur Hayes. 6 transport requests were listed. Each request was scheduled for 10 a.m. on January 7th. I called the transport company. Medical Transport Services, this is Gary. Gary, this is Caroline West at Evergreen Care Center. I'm calling to confirm a transport scheduled for today at 10 a.m. Okay. What's the resident's name? Arthur Hayes. I heard typing. I'm showing 6 requests for Arthur Hayes, all scheduled for today at 10 a.m. 6 requests? Yes, they were submitted on 6 different dates, but all of them list the same pickup time. Can you tell me when the requests were submitted? Sure. January 1st, January 2nd, January 3rd, January 4th, January 5th, and January 6th. All for today at 10 a.m.? Correct. Have any of those transports been completed? No. All 6 are listed as pending. I ended the call. I checked the time. 9:42 a.m. I returned to the 2nd floor and stood outside room 231. At 9:58 a.m., Linda Hayes arrived. She was carrying a small bag of Arthur's personal belongings. Caroline, I'm here for my father. I hesitated. Linda, can you come with me to his room? We walked to room 231 together. I opened the door. The room was empty. Linda stared at the empty bed. Where is he? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? The transfer is scheduled for 10 a.m. I understand, but your father isn't in the room. Linda's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Where is he? I'm trying to locate him. Please wait here. I walked quickly to the nurse's station and called security. Security, this is Caroline West. I need assistance locating a resident. Arthur Hayes, room 231. Is this a missing person situation? I don't know. The resident isn't in his room and his discharge is scheduled for 10 a.m. I'll send someone to check the common areas. I returned to room 231. Linda was standing beside the bed, her hand resting on the mattress. The bed is warm, she said quietly. I know. Where is he? At 10 a.m., the bed sensor alert chimed on my phone. I checked the notification. Bed status change, room 231, occupancy no longer detected. I looked at the bed. The mattress was no longer warm. I placed my hand on it. It was cool to the touch. Linda looked at me. What's happening? I didn't answer. At 10:03 a.m., security called me. Caroline, we've completed a sweep of the building. Arthur Hayes is not in any of the common areas, therapy rooms, or dining hall. Check the hospice transfer van. He might have already been transported. Understood. At 10:07 a.m., security called back. The transport van just arrived. The driver says he hasn't picked anyone up yet. I ended the call. I accessed Arthur's medical record. A new entry had appeared. Resident transferred to hospice care. Discharge completed at 10 a.m. January 7th. Family accompanied resident to receiving facility. Bed status, available for reassignment. I checked the bed assignment log. Room 231. Vacant. Available for immediate admission. I looked at Linda. I need to make a call. Please wait here. I walked to the hallway and called Meadowview Hospice. Meadowview Hospice, this is Sharon. Sharon, this is Caroline West at Evergreen Care Center. I'm calling to confirm the arrival of a transfer patient, Arthur Hayes. One moment. I waited. Sharon returned. Yes, Arthur Hayes was admitted at 10:05 a.m. this morning. I felt the pressure tighten in my chest. He's already there? Yes, his daughter accompanied him. His daughter is here with me. There was a pause. I'm sorry, I don't understand. We have Arthur Hayes and his daughter Linda in our admissions office right now. I looked back at room 231. Linda was still standing beside the bed. "Sharon, I need to call you back." I ended the call and returned to the room. Linda was gone. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I checked the hallway. Empty. I called security. "Did you see Linda Hayes leave the second floor?" "No. We've been monitoring the elevators. No one matching that description has left the floor." I returned to room 231 and stood in the doorway. The bed was made. The room was empty. The mattress was cool. I accessed the bed sensor data. Last occupancy detected January 7th, 10 a.m. Duration 6 days, 23 hours. Current status, vacant. I closed the file and left the room. At 11 a.m. I called Meadowview Hospice again. "Sharon, this is Caroline West. I called earlier about Arthur Hayes." "Yes, he's settling in well." "Is his daughter still with him?" "Yes, she's here." "Can you describe her?" Sure. She's in her mid-50s, brown hair, about 5'6". That matched Linda's description. "Thank you." I ended the call. I returned to my office and reviewed the discharge summaries one final time. 7 entries now. Discharge 7, January 7th, 10 a.m. I checked the author, Nurse Caroline West. I checked the timestamp, 10 a.m. I had not written the summary. I had been standing in room 231 at 10 a.m. But the summary was complete. I closed the file and logged out. I left the building at noon. I did not return to Evergreen after that day. But sometimes I think about Arthur Hayes, about the 7 discharge summaries, about the bed that stayed warm for 6 days while the room remained empty, about Linda who stood beside me in the room and then appeared at the hospice facility without ever leaving. Some discharges are completed before the transfer occurs. Some beds remain occupied long after the resident leaves. And some of us are still waiting for a discharge that happens over and over without ever truly ending.